Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Welcome, everyone. It is Wednesday, September the 1st, 2021. It is currently 5:14 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the empty sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church located right here in Ovalo, Texas. And welcome back to another Bible study exercise. Yes, this week, it's all about 1 Kings. It's been about 1 Kings for a couple of weeks now. Specifically, when I say it's about 1 Kings, specifically, it's about 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 17 to verse 24. That's where we have been all week. We've done a couple of podcasts. Obviously, you have access to the curriculum. If you have signed up, if you have not, go to theologycentral.net, go to the blog section, look for the article that refers to Daily Discipleship Guide, click on the link. It'll take you to Ministry Grid, register, and you have access to all of the curriculum. Please use it. And of course, if you are participating in the Bible study exercises, I love to hear from you. You can always email me at newsif, at newsif at yahoo.com. Wow, am I having problems with that email address? Newsif at yahoo.com, newsif at yahoo.com. Please email me. Someone emailed me today with doing some of the assignments, doing their homework, them working on the Bible study, and I'm going to be sharing some of their perspective because that's one of the reasons I like you to. That's one of the reasons I want you to participate. I want you to participate because you contribute to the discussion. All right, remember, we are classmates. I do not want the Bible study exercise to be where you just sit there and listen to me teach you. It's we're all in this together. We're working together. I'm trying to get you to study the Bible for yourself. Remember, trying to move you from, come on, you can all say it, class. Everybody can say it. Trying to move you from being a passive listener to an active participant. I want that notebook open. I want you writing. I want you using all of the reference tools. I want you digging in, and I hope that that's what you are doing. So let's open our Bibles back to 1 Kings. Let's jump into, I think this is part 3. We haven't done as many podcast episodes for this week's study because I've really just wanted you to read the text over and over and over, and I've given you very specific things to look at. Remember, yesterday was all about the number 3. The number 3. And we're going to read the text again. I know I keep reading that over and over and over again, but that's one of the reasons. That's the way you learn, is by reading the text over and over again. And one of the goals is we're taking one text and spending an entire week on that text. And the goal is to have you reading it over and over every day until that text becomes a part of you. In other words, if you hear someone say anything about 1 Kings 17, you should be like, oh, no, wait, that happens. No, this happens, that happens, this happens. Nope, that's not correct, because you have read it so many times. The more you read, the more you're protected. The more you read, the more you are protected. I'm going to say this. Now, I know this is going to be controversial because I'm going to use the word vaccine, but let me state it this way. Reading the text of Scripture is a vaccine protecting you from anyone mishandling that text of Scripture in your presence, okay? In other words, let's state it this way. Reading the text of Scripture is a vaccine that protects you from being misled and confused about what the Scriptures actually say. If you want to be protected from anyone, twisting, manipulating you, or deceiving you about what the Scriptures say, your vaccine is simply pick up your Bible and read it over and 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 over again until you know it so well that you can be like, no, actually, I know you're trying to apply that text to this situation, but the context there, because I've only read it 900 times, you're going to know. And so that's why I want you reading it over and over. Reading the Scriptures is a vaccine that protects you from anyone mishandling or deceiving you or misleading you into what the text actually says. Reading the Scripture is a vaccine of protection. It's that simple. Study, the same thing. Reading and study. If you read and you study, you even have more protection. Okay, if we're using the terminology that's relevant in our society in 2021, think of it this way: reading is the vaccine. Now, actually, reading is the vaccine, study is the booster. I don't know. You need both, okay? And it's the mask, it's the social distancing, it's everything. It's everything you need is picking up and reading and reading and reading and reading and studying and studying and studying. So are you ready to do that? 1 Kings chapter 17. We have a lot to get to. We're going to do a little bit of a clarification, and we're going to do this is going to really turn into a little bit of a study on how to do correct cross-referencing. That we're going to get into a little study about that as well. But are you ready? 1 Kings chapter 17, Ahab's in power. There is idolatry with Baal worship. Elijah has told him it's not going to rain. That means Baal is not obviously the supreme god, even though he's the storm god, fertility god who has relations with the female deity Asherah, and which supposedly brings about rain. It's still not going to rain. All of these things are going on. And then Elijah, he comes on the scene, tells them it's not going to rain. And then, as I've already stated, and then a number of things go on. I kind of want to start reviewing the entire chapter, but you get the idea. 1 Kings chapter 17, we'll jump into verse 17. And it came to pass after these things, because Elijah has been sent to a widow's house, Gentile, in a Gentile region where Baal worship is prominent. And he's there, and they've been miraculously, God has provided food for them. He's been living there. And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and the sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And she said unto Elijah, What have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance and to slay my son? And he said unto her, Give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom, carried him into a loft where he abode, laid him upon his own bed. And he cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourn by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. Now, yesterday was a singular focus. What in the world is going on in that scene? What is going on in that situation where Elijah lays himself upon the dead child, not once, not twice, but 3 times? What is going on there? I stand by my claim, by my belief, that this is so, to me, out of place, so unique that it screams to me as the reader, stop and pay attention. Because I could just say, oh, well, that's what he did. He laid down 3 times and the child was healed. So nothing to see here. Everyone move on. But I can't do that. I think there's something that there's too much going on in this chapter that doesn't make any sense. I'm just perplexed by it. I am confused by it. And so we started trying to figure it out. And we started looking at some theories, all right? Now, I don't have my notes from yesterday in front of me, so I'm just going to paraphrase. So if things are not exact with my review or with what I taught yesterday, you can make adjustments if you need to. All right, so here we go. Theory number 1 is that what Elijah was doing here by laying on the child was a natural means of resuscitating the child and bringing the child back. And within this theory that he was using natural means here, in other words, physical touch, laying his body on the child to warm up the body, whatever the case may be, there's a couple of ideas here. Some say he's using natural means because the child wasn't actually dead. He was just unconscious. He was senseless. And by physical touch, laying his body on him, not once, not twice, but 3 times, it brought the child back out of a state of unconsciousness. He wasn't actually dead. Now, we have a problem with that because to me, the text seems to go above and beyond demonstrating that the child was dead. I think the child was dead. So we have a problem with there. Second problem, or second idea that goes along with the natural means. So the first idea that goes along with the natural means is that the child was not really dead. The first problem with that is the text to me indicates that he was. The second thing that goes along with the natural means idea is that the child was dead, but he used some natural means to bring him back, some kind of, I don't know, CPR. He was laying down on the body, some kind of resuscitation to bring the child back. So one, he wasn't dead. We have a problem the text seems to indicate. Number two, the second thing that goes with the natural means idea is that the child was dead, but he was brought back through a natural resuscitation method of some sort. Now, the problem with that one is the text, if you go back to 1 Kings 17, there's too many miraculous things here. Elijah says it's not going to rain. The rain just stops. Just stops. For 3.5 years, according to the Luke passage that references this? 3+ years. It just stops raining. All right. That seems supernatural. Yes? Next, ravens bringing Elijah food. All right, that's supernatural. Next, the provision of the food for Elijah, the widow, and the widow's son. All supernatural miracles. So for this, all of a sudden, he lays himself on the body to resuscitate it, to bring it back through some natural means, and even if the child was dead. It goes against the whole concept of the chapter where there are supernatural things happening. So the natural means idea doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me to say that the child wasn't dead when the text seems to say he was. It doesn't make any sense to say that the child was dead, but it was naturally brought back through natural means, not anything supernatural. All of that doesn't make any sense. So we threw out the natural means idea. We just threw it out. We said, nope, doesn't work. A second theory is that all that Elijah was doing was demonstrating a practice of prayer that was present in the Old Testament, where they prayed at specific times of the day. All right. And that he was demonstrating not just this practice of praying at specific times of day, he was simply demonstrating persistency in prayer. So what they typically do is when he laid down the body 3 times, if you go back to 1 Kings chapter 17, he laid down 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. The way this idea works is that when he laid himself on the body 3 times, what went along with that was also 3 prayers, or that he prayed 3 separate times. In other words, it records him praying once, but really when he stretched himself on the body, each time he was saying the same prayer. O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. So that he laid on the body 3 times and prayed 3 times. That is the assertion with this theory, that this is just showing persistence in prayer and demonstrating a practice of praying 3 times. And sometimes they'll use as a cross-reference Psalm 55. Psalm 55. Verse 17, Psalm 55, verse 17, where we read this: evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. Now, there are a number of passages that kind of repeat this kind of idea of praying 3 times a day, praying at these or 3 specific times. Well, if we use Psalm 55 and go back, then we have to ask ourselves, well, so do we interpret that text to be saying that he laid on the body in the evening and prayed, in the morning and then in the afternoon? Or, well, the Bible just demonstrates praying 3 different times, so he laid the body on the body 3 times and he prayed 3 times. You have to make a lot of assumptions that this is just showing some kind of persistency in prayer. And I understand that there's a part of me that wants to go with that one because it just seems so nice and it explains everything. But I have to avoid then other scriptures that say 7 times a day will I praise thee. I think that's a psalm that states that. So what about the times where there's more than 3 times? But because he does it 3, he lays on the body 3 times, then they'll just go with the passages that have evening, morning, and afternoon. So okay, again, it seems so easy to resolve, but here's my problem with the persistency in prayer and 3 times a day kind of praying as the answer. And here's my issue. You can show persistency in prayer without laying on a dead body. You can show persistency in prayer and pray 3 times without laying on a dead body. In fact, you can pray more than 3 times a day and never touch the dead body, never pick it up, and never lay down on it. And what makes it even more just doesn't make any sense to me, well, he's going to lay on this body to simply demonstrate persistency in prayer. But by touching the body, laying on the body, Elijah made himself unclean according to the Old Testament law. So he's making himself unclean to show persistency in prayer. So the way to show persistency in prayer is to make yourself unclean. So does that even have any application for us? Hey guys, the way we do this is if you want to show hey, we're going to have a prayer meeting, and the way we're going to demonstrate our persistency in prayer is we're all going to go out there and do something sinful. So it doesn't make sense that he would touch the dead body. It makes him unclean. And then when you start looking at the chapter, remember we discovered some very weird things. Number 1, Elijah's fed by ravens. Ravens are unclean. So he was being provided by birds who are unclean. Does that make the food unclean? Did that make Elijah unclean? Seems odd. Next, he's told, if you go back in 1 Kings 17, he's told to go to Zarephath. Well, wait a minute. He's going into a Gentile region where there's Baal worship, and he's going to the house of a widow who's a Gentile, and he's going to eat with her. All of those things were considered to be not acceptable and would have made him, in a sense, basically doing something unclean again. So you have the ravens, you have the Gentile region, Gentile widow, and eating with them. There's, again, unclean. And then, to top it all off, there's the third uncleanliness. He picks up the dead body, lays it on his bed, and then lays on the dead body. It's like the text is just trying to show you all the ways he was trying to do something to be unclean. Picks up the dead body, lays it on his bed, and lays on it. Like the text is going above and beyond to say he had contact with the dead body. And then you go, wait a minute, is it in Numbers that if you come with a contact with the dead body, you're unclean for 7 days? Like, what is he doing? So does that make it 20? Like he came in contact with a body in numerous different ways. So what is going on here? So to me, what I find interesting is that in 1 Kings 17, it was through unclean methods that supernatural provision was attained or came to them. And I'm not saying that this was the intent of the text, but when I consider the New Testament, what do I find? Jesus Christ, the eternal Son of God, became sin. In other words, my sin is attributed to him. He is declared to be sinful. He doesn't actually become sinful, but he's declared to be sin because my sin is imputed to his account. He becomes sin that I then may be provided the righteousness of God, which then is imputed to my account. I am declared to be righteous. So he becomes sinful so that I can become righteous. He became poor so that I can become rich. He died so that I can live, and cursed is anyone that hangs on a tree. I think that in a roundabout way, through these unclean means comes provision, and in a roundabout way, the similar thing takes place in salvation. I think that there's a picture. I'm not saying that that's what was intended, because no one reading it originally would have ever understood that. But they would have to have gone, wait, what? What is going on? So here's what we have. We have the natural means theory. We have the persistency and prayer theory. And then the theory I just kind of articulated to you. I didn't name it first, but I guess we'll call this there's a spiritual picture being presented here in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to say that this was intended. I can't say that this would have been anything the original recipients would have picked up. They would have had to pick up that. They would have known, any Jewish person reading 1 Kings would have known that he was unclean. So they would have had to ask the question, why? Why did God do it this way? I'm not saying that was supposed to immediately make them start thinking of how this was all going to work out in some salvific way, but it's interesting that that's what takes place. All right. Now, In the midst of talking about all of this, we had a very interesting interaction with the Psalm 55 passage that I read. All right? And I'm going to use this interaction that we had to clarify and to challenge you to maybe a better understanding of cross-referencing. All right? So let me explain here. All right. When I do the Bible study exercises, remember that I do some teaching and some things I teach in a way where I don't really know. I act like I don't know, or I'm literally live at that very moment. Oh, let's consider this. Let's look this up. Let's look this up. Because it's supposed to, the Bible study exercises are supposed to carry the idea that we're like literally sitting down together having a Bible study. Like you drove by the church, you saw that I'm here, you came in, you sat down at the table, like, what are we going to study? Well, let's grab our Bibles, let's grab the Bible dictionary, let's just start studying. Now, whenever you're studying in real time like that, well, there can be times where you don't say something exactly right. There's some things that may have to be clarified. And I have to clarify something that I did in part 1. I went back and listened to it yesterday. It's definitely a mistake, but it's not, I don't know how many people would even pick it up, but I always like to be honest when I make a mistake and try to clarify it, because I think hopefully you'll learn from it. Okay, so we're going to use it as an opportunity to learn a little bit about cross-referencing, and we're going to use it for that opportunity. But my mistake was simply I didn't think it through at that second and didn't catch it till yesterday, and all of a sudden I realized the mistake I made. Let me explain. All right. 1 Kings 17. We have Elijah, possibly, some believe, reflecting this 3 times of prayer concept. Again, Psalm 55, verse 17, evening, morning, and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. So in 1 Kings, we have someone actually doing something, and we're trying to understand why he would do it. The commentaries grabbed Psalm 55, went back, placed it there next in 1 Kings 17, and said, here's probably the reason why. Here's what he was trying to demonstrate. Here's what he was doing. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why should we go to Psalm 55 and bring it back? And I made some statement like, well, wait a minute. Some refer to this as a Psalm of David. In fact, one source, states the time Psalm 55 was written. In fact, I have it right here. They have Psalm 55 being written during the time of 2 Samuel 17:29, during David's flight from Absalom. All right, well, clearly David comes before this situation. All right, David comes before this situation in 1 Kings with Ahab and Elijah. Clearly it comes first. So the argument would be, if David was praying 3 times a day, evening, morning, and noon, and if that would have been a common practice that was happening, then clearly Elijah would have known that practice and could have possibly been trying to reflect that practice by laying on a dead body 3 times. So you could argue that the practice was in place. But let me make it very clear. I think these are the 2 concepts I was trying to work through when I made this comment. All right, so clearly David would have already existed. This practice could have already been in play. But let me make it very clear. This is very important. Would Elijah have had the book of Psalms in his possession, or even knew the book of Psalms existed? Well, we need to just figure something else out here. So let's do this. All right. The date of the writing of the Psalms. A careful examination of the authorship question, as well as the subject matter covered by the Psalms themselves, reveals that they span a period of many centuries. The oldest psalm in the collection is probably the prayer of Moses, a reflection on the frailty of man as compared to the eternity of God. The latest psalm is probably Psalm 137, a song of lament clearly written during the days when the Hebrews were being held captive by the Babylonians from about 586 to 538 BC. It is clear that the 150 individual Psalms were written by many different people across a period of thousands of years in Israel's history. They must have been compiled and put together in their present form by some unknown editor shortly after the captivity ended, the Babylonian captivity, in 537 BC. So you put all of that together, that's after the Babylonian captivity. That's after they go into captivity. So Elijah would not, if my timeline is correct, he wouldn't have obviously had access to the book of Psalms. So what I'm saying is, if we're going to borrow a cross-reference, we need to make sure that we're borrowing a cross-reference from a book that Elijah would not have seen or read from. And we're going to take that back to explain behavior that he did. Now, at the same time, though, David, if David is the author of Psalm 55, and he did write that at the time of Absalom, could be expressing here what was happening, though, before Elijah. Therefore, the practice could have been known. All right? And we have some other passages there as well. I think if we looked at all of the three times they prayed, do I have my notes? Let me see if I have my notes here. Because we had some... We have some here. Let's go here. We have some other three times here. We have Daniel 6:10. Okay, we have the Numbers 6:24 through 26, which doesn't say they prayed three times a day, but it's kind of like a threefold blessing. So does that reflect, does that cross-reference work? And then we have Daniel 6, which isn't Daniel 6, aren't we back in the time of Babylonian captivity? Right? So, right? In fact, let me look here. Give me 1 second here. Let me look. I'm going to make sure that we are absolutely correct here. But I'm doing this all on purpose. I'm doing this all on purpose because I want us to see when we're doing cross-references, these are some of the questions we have to ask ourselves. All right? Daniel, the 6th century Judahite prophet, in other words, from Judah, exiled to Babylon, has given his name to this book as its composer. His name means God judges or God judge in Hebrews. All right, here we see here. I'm reading here. So do we have anything? Do they give us? Okay, Daniel perhaps finally compiled in 530 BC. The book is technically anonymous, although much of it is recorded as first-person memoirs of Daniel. According to uniform Jewish and early Christian belief, Daniel wrote the book. In Matthew 24:15, Jesus affirmed this view. Critical scholarship for the past 2 centuries have universally rejected a 6th century author, and they go through. But so that gives us some basic idea. If Daniel writes it, you're having him doing so as someone who was exiled during the Babylonian captivity. So if he's during the Babylonian captivity, if he's over there writing the book of Daniel, can I take a quote from Daniel's book and then bring it back to Elijah and say, see, he wouldn't have known the book, right? Now, we'd have to work on the timeline. Here's Elijah, put it all in chronological order and go, okay, wait, what? So would that demonstrate this practice? Because Daniel prays 3 times, we get those ideas. Would it come before? These are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself when cross-referencing. So let me state it again, right? And I'm doing all of that to get you to think about this, okay? So here's what I want you to do. I could clean up that timeline a little bit for you, but I'm not going to do that because I want you to work on the timeline. All right, so here's what I want you to do. You can work on the timeline. Okay, where is Elijah when the Babylonian captivity is going on? Where is Elijah when the Babylonian captivity is over? All right, now some of you already know the answer immediately, but that's okay. Just work that out a little bit, just for fun, because I want you to demonstrate how this works. Now, here's the question: if Elijah is nowhere to be found by the time the book of Psalms is compiled, then that means he would have never probably saw, read, or heard Psalm 55, verse 17. If Elijah is nowhere to be found when the book of Daniel is composed, then there's no way he's reading from Daniel chapter 6 going, oh, he prayed 3 times a day, et cetera, et cetera. So do I borrow those things from a different time period, take them, insert them back to Elijah and go, that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. Now, if I can demonstrate that the practice precedes Elijah, which Psalm 55 would at least precede. In other words, that would be David expressing something that he would have been doing, which would have been prior to Elijah. Okay, is he expressing a normal thing or is it a unique thing? So if we're trying to explain what Elijah did when he laid on the body 3 times, and we're like, oh, he's just demonstrating praying 3 times a day, well, then I've got to demonstrate that he would have had some understanding of the practice and he would have known what was going on. I do know that even if you think that proves that that's what it demonstrates, it still makes no sense that he's laying on a dead body, because I don't see anywhere else where it says pray 3 times a day and lay on a dead body. No, you're not supposed to touch a dead body. You're not supposed to come in contact with a dead body. So I still wouldn't explain that. Like you could possibly explain, like you could explain the 3 times reference as 3 times to prayer, but the fact that he's laying on a dead body 3 times, the persistency in prayer and the 3 times a day prayer concept doesn't explain that. He's laying on a dead body. So I just want you to see, and I want to clarify that's what I was trying to work through in my mind. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, the book of Psalms is not written yet. That's what I was thinking, but I failed to take into consideration, wait a minute though. This is possibly a Psalm of David, possibly written when he was fleeing from Absalom. Okay, that precedes Elijah. So he wouldn't know the scripture, but he may know the practice. Because again, we're trying to understand why he's doing what he is doing. These are questions you have to have when cross-referencing, right? So I'm going to throw out some basic concepts here on cross-referencing and just try to give us a little lesson on cross-referencing. So here's what I want you to consider, all right? Very important. When you're cross-referencing something, now it depends on what you're trying to prove. It depends on what you're trying to demonstrate, right? If you're trying to demonstrate, oh, they're doing this because see, this is what people did. This is what the practice was. Just make sure you take into consideration the time period from which the cross-reference originates. That's what I just want you to write that down as the first principle of cross-referencing. Consider the time, the chronological order, and the time in which you are referencing. Okay? In other words, if I'm over here in Genesis, just for example, I just say I'm in Genesis 2, Genesis 3, and Adam and Eve does something, right? Do I run to something found in, one of the minor prophets and go, well, that explains what they were doing? They're separated by thousands of years. So how can I go grab that reference and bring it back? I hope that makes sense. This is where I wish I had the room was full of people. If this doesn't make any sense, please email me. If you're listening to me live, let me know that it makes sense, because this is very important. So I've seen people just grab a cross-reference and go, see, they're connected. Well, they use the same word. Congratulations. They're talking about the same thing. Congratulations. But they're separated by 1,000 years. They're separated by 500 years. So how are you bringing that back into it? Are you trying to prove that this demonstrates that? Like sometimes that may work, right? In other words, if you're doing a cross-reference, because for example, this passage speaks about the holiness of God. Okay, well, that passage over there in the New Testament, it also speaks about the holiness of God. All right, now that means I'm getting the entire biblical teaching on the holiness of God. See, those cross-references work because I'm dealing with a topic or a theme. But when I'm trying to explain a behavior or trying to explain something, and I'm pulling from things that come after to explain behavior done earlier, that can be a problem. That can be a problem. because the person the person you're referencing has no clue of that cross-referencing coming later. They have no clue. So I don't think Elijah was laying down on the dead body 3 times because he knew. I mean, I have to assume he was doing that because God told him to. It would make no sense that he would just do it on his own. I have to believe that he's being instructed by God here. I know the text is silence, but it makes no sense that Elijah would just say, hey, this one time I'm going to lay on a dead body. That goes against everything in the Old Testament. So if God is the one telling him to do so, then we can assume that Elijah didn't even understand what he was doing, but God had a purpose in doing it because he wanted it recorded in the text. And so then it was for the reader to figure out. But if I try to go find something that happens later and bring it back, I've got to take into consideration the time period and the chronological order when I'm doing this. And so I want you to do a little work there. For example, the cross-references, remember the cross-references that we were given, at least in one commentary and trying to explain him laying down on the body 3 times. Let me go back to it. Here are the cross-references we were given. Psalm 55:17, Daniel 6:10, Daniel 6:13, Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26, and Isaiah 6:3. All right? So we have, in fact, let me do something really quick. I may be able to help you out. Maybe not. I may be able to help you out. Probably shouldn't. I probably should just make you do the work. I'm just going to look up one source here. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Elijah. All right. Here we go. Here's what we have. Elijah, an influential prophet who lived in the 9th century BC during the reigns of Ahab in the reigns of Ahab in the northern kingdom of Israel. Elijah shaped the history of his day and dominated Israelite thinking for centuries afterwards. All right, so he's in the 9th century BC. He's in the 9th century BC. All right, if we go to, I'm going to just look up Daniel really quick. All right, let's see. Daniel was taken. Daniel was a teenager when he was taken from Jerusalem into captivity by the Babylonians. 605 BC. 605 BC. There, I'm giving you a little bit of timeline there. Now you start putting that together. Okay, wait. Who's first? All right. Okay. Am I giving you some clues now? All right. I think I was trying to be careful what I read there because I didn't want to give too much away, but I just want you to see just a little bit of reference tools. You can start figuring out where he fits in here. Where does he fit in? Now, clearly, we know he comes after David. No question about that. Clearly, though, Elijah comes before the book of Psalms is compiled and put together. So obviously, he doesn't know that text, but David could have been referencing a practice. But Daniel, where does Daniel fit in there? All right, you can do a little bit of work there. So that's the first thing. In your cross-references, consider the time period, the time difference. Consider the chronological order and just ask yourself, okay, does that in any way, shape, or form hurt or would disqualify this cross-reference? That's the question to ask. Consider the time and ask yourself, does the time difference, does the chronological order in some way would discount or would disqualify this as being an accurate cross-reference? All right, so consider time. Right now, sometimes cross-referencing is also referred to as correlating or correlation. Right, where you're trying to correlate or bring about some correlation between one section of Scripture and another section of Scripture. Right, sometimes it's referred to that. So we're going to look at some practical ways to correlate verses or to do some correlation. The first thing we've considered is you have to pay attention to the time, to the chronological order. Next, you want to look for cross-references within the same book you are studying. This is internal correlation. So consider the time. All right, there's one. And then look for, first of all, then you look for cross-references within the same book. This is internal correlation. And why is this important? Because now you don't have any time issues. You have no time issues. It's the same book. Now I take it back. Depending on how wide of time period that book covers, but you're probably going to be much more within the same time frame there than you are in some books. Now, yes, remember, in some prophetic books, you may get a prophecy that jumps way into the future. So even there, you have to, just a general rule is you got to figure out the time period that you're cross-referencing. You got to figure that out. But here, start with doing internal correlation. All right, that's cross-references within the same book. Okay, is there anything in this book that helps me understand this passage? Because you're relying on the same author, so therefore he may be using the same concepts, and the way he uses those concepts would probably be consistent throughout the book, right? All right, so consider time, do cross-references with the same book. You can write down internal correlation. Next, compare statements and other writings by the same author. Then you're like, okay, the author of this book, what other books did he write? Now, how did he use this phrase? How did he use this word? How did he use this concept? This is called external correlation. All right? So internal correlation and external correlation. So let's go through them. Number one, consider the time. Number two, do cross-references within the same book, internal correlation. That's what it's called. Next, number three, compare statements and other writings by the same author. This is external correlation. Next, compare with other books in the same testament. All right? You can call this testament correlation, all right? All right? You can call this the same testament correlation if you want. The same testament, right? So if you're in the Old Testament, the Old Testament. You're in the New, then the New, all right? Next, compare references and all of Scripture you can find, cross-references. Okay, well, there we go. Then you look for references anywhere else in the Bible. So first, consider the time. Next, do internal correlation, which is within the same book. Next, do external correlation. It's within, look for cross-references within the same writings of the same author. Then compare with the other books in the same testament. Then look everywhere else. So if you think about it, you start close, then you expand. Start close and expand. Whenever, in your Bible study, whenever you list your cross-references, they should always start with, there's the internal correlation, same book. There's the external, all right, the same author. Okay, then there's the testament correlation, same testament. Then we'll call it the wider or Bible correlation. Now you look to the rest of Scripture. A lot of people immediately start cross-referencing outside of the book, outside of the author, sometimes even outside of the same testament. You got to start with that internal and then build out. That's the way to do it. All right? Now, let me give you some different types of cross-references. There are several types of cross-references. One we'll call the pure cross-reference. The pure cross-reference, sometimes called the parallel cross-reference, because it says almost exactly the same thing as the verse you're analyzing. A pure cross-reference or a parallel cross-reference is where you see something here and it says almost the exact same thing somewhere else. That is a pure or a parallel, right? Oh, it says, that blessed is the pure in heart. Well, there it says blessed is in the pure in heart. It says the exact same thing. That's a pure or parallel, all right? So you may want to identify when you write your cross-reference down, you may want to write down, this is a parallel, this is a pure cross-reference. Identify it. Just identify it. Right next to when you list your cross-references out, identify if they're internal, external, testament, or Bible correlation. Identify that, and then next identify if it's a pure or a parallel cross-reference. A lot of people are not willing to put forth this work, but if you're not, then, I don't know what to tell you. Next, the illustrative cross-reference. This type, which may involve a real event or person in history, illustrates what the verse you are studying is saying. So in other words, an illustrative cross-reference is you have something here, right? Here's something that happens, but you think this verse, or how could we do this? Think of it this way. I'll kind of reverse this a little bit so that it helps. You're studying something about, maybe you're reading a verse in the Proverbs about the foolish man or the foolish woman or whatever the case may be, the foolish son, whatever. And you can then immediately go, okay, here's an illustrative cross-reference that demonstrates foolishness in practice. Or, for example, in the Proverbs, you have scriptures about wine being a mocker, and anyone who's deceived by it is a fool. Then you can demonstrate how wine is a mocker and how it can hurt people's lives. You can take some of those verses in Proverbs that talk about the danger of alcohol, and then you could go show a passage of scripture where it illustrates that principle. Okay, so you could find a verse that you're reading about pride, and then you find a cross-reference where it illustrates the danger and damage of pride. So this is an illustrative cross-reference. You have a concept, you have an idea, and then you find something in the Bible that illustrates that principle, that idea in practice. All right, so you have the pure or parallel, and then you have the illustrative. All right, here's the concept. All right, here's a passage that really illustrates this in some way, shape, or form. You've got to be able to explain how it illustrates it. Sometimes it should be obvious. Usually it should be a very obvious illustration. It should be. All right, there is the pure or parallel. There's the illustrative. And next, the contrasting cross-reference. The contrasting cross-reference is the type that says the opposite of what your verse says. It may look like contradiction, but it is actually approaching the subject from a different viewpoint. All right, a contrasting cross-reference. All right, this says this, but wait, that seems to be saying the opposite. Now, a lot of times people don't go look for that. In fact, those are usually things we want to avoid because it appears to be a contradiction. But don't be afraid of that. Find the verses that seem to be saying something different, opposite, because it may be presenting a different viewpoint on the same subject. You need to consider that. Maybe there is some major apparent contradiction, at least has the appearance of, and you've got to resolve it. All right, so let's go through those again. The pure or the parallel, the illustrative, and then the contrasting. All right. Now, one last lesson here about cross-referencing. So first, we consider the time. We make sure we have an understanding of the chronology before we put something down as a cross-reference, because sometimes the time may actually disqualify it. Next, we look for internal correlation. We look for cross-references within the same book. Then we go to an external by the same writer, right? Same author. Next, we go to the same testament. This is the same testament correlation. And then we go to Bible correlation. We look everywhere else. We start close. We expand. The different types of cross-referencing is the pure parallel, where the passages basically say the exact same thing. The illustrative, where you have a principle or an idea and you think this verse illustrates that principle or idea. The contrasting, where you find cross-references that seem to be saying completely something different. And then we'll end with this. Never use a cross-reference or reference a cross-reference until you have checked the context of the cross-reference. It may appear to be saying what you think because it's using the same word, using the same phrase, and be like, oh, look, I can take it. But you've got to consider the context of the verse you're cross-referencing, because the context may be, oh, wait a minute, that's saying something completely different. That doesn't have anything to do with what I'm referencing here. You've got to check the context. So the first and last principle are principles to protect you. Consider the time and consider the context. That's to protect you from using a cross-reference that isn't applicable. Then you start with the internal and expand out to the rest of the Bible. You start in the same book, the same author, the same testament, then the Bible. You start close and move out, and then you need to know the different types of cross-references, which is pure or parallel, illustrative, and contrasting. There you have it. Right? I almost just dropped my Kindle. There you have it. Now, I threw in a little bit of confusion there about the timeline. I still want you to figure out, where does Elijah fit in? I want you to, and I know you're like, well, just give me the answer. I could give you some of the answers, some of it I would have to verify, make sure that I'm correct. I would have to verify a little bit of it. But I really want you to do so just for an exercise, right? Because if anytime we're in any of these historical narratives, anytime we're studying historical narratives, this is a practice you need to be good at. You need to know, okay, wait a minute. He lives at this time. All right. Now I'm going to use a cross-reference. Wait a minute. I'm cross-referencing that. That doesn't happen for another 400 years. That doesn't happen for another 500 years. That doesn't happen for another 600 years. Does that disqualify it from being a good cross-reference? I know a lot of times we don't think about chronology. We don't think about putting things in chronological order, because the Bible, you can get a chronological Bible where it puts everything in chronological order, but a lot of times we don't consider the chronological order. We don't. And you have people doing cross-references, and you're just like, wait, what did you just do? I've seen people grab something from the New Testament, come running back to Exodus, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. Now, sometimes that could work, because sometimes in the New Testament makes reference to what happened in Exodus. Okay, well then obviously now you're getting to one of those pure parallel possible cross-references, something that would be very relatable. But in some cases, you're like, it just used the same word, and you're grabbing it and you're like, slow down here. We got to think this through. So I thought we would do a little bit of just trying to use that mistake I made, because in my brain, I was just like, wait a minute. Psalms comes after 1 Kings. Why are we cross-referencing this? And I didn't even think about it, but wait a minute. The book was written after Elijah. However, it's the Psalm of David. So David, who writes a good portion of these, and we believe Psalm 55, at least according to some, is when he was fleeing Absalom. So this would all have occurred. So this could be describing a practice that would have been happening before Elijah. So you've got to consider both aspects there. Not only when the book was written, when are the thing you're cross-referencing, when did it occur? You've got to consider all of this, or you'll end up making some mistakes. There you have it. Now, I don't have any questions in the chat. That tells me that I've done an excellent job. I know I haven't done a perfect job, but I purposely didn't do a perfect job because I want you to figure out Elijah, Daniel. Just work on that one. The Numbers reference, obviously that comes before Elijah, but that one doesn't really help. There's the Isaiah 6:3, holy, 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 where there's a threefold repetition. That doesn't really help. So we can throw those two out. Not really anything helpful. We got the Psalm 55, and we got the Daniel. And there we have it. And we have a siren going by, and I'm here in the middle of nowhere. That always makes me a little concerned. It's probably usually a traffic accident. So you may want to pray about that situation. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop right there. Oh, and the reason I have to stop is because there's more I want to say. But I think this is what sometimes in the middle of doing Bible study, we have to refresh our skills on what we're doing. And I think this just brought up a lot of questions about cross-references. So, well, let's keep these in mind and see if this comes into play at any later time. All right, there you have. Oh, I wanted to go to the email that someone sent me. Okay, we won't be able to do that today. Because I wanted to go to the email because they offered some of their thoughts about the whole thing. They went more with the persistent in prayer idea. Again, I just challenged that idea because you can be persistent in prayer without laying on a dead body. It's still laying on the dead body doesn't make any sense. And we don't know, based off the way the text is reading, did he pray 3 times or did he just pray once? Did he lay on the body 3 times and pray once? Well, that's not persistence in prayer. So you have to infer that he prayed 3 different times, but the text seems to only record that he prayed once. So I'm having a hard time with that one, but you can let me know what you think. You can email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Use the curriculum. In fact, the person who emailed me made a reference to the leader's guide. So that means we have one student using the curriculum who found the leader's guide and is using it. That is, use it all. Use the discipleship guide, use the adult study guide, use the leader's guide. Use it all. That's one of the things is if you were to buy all three of those, right? If you were to buy the quarterly subscription to all three of those, it would, I don't know how much it would cost. It would probably be over $20 a month just for you by yourself. But I think it's about $25 a month. We're currently, remember, a listener is paying for it. They basically paid to give multiple people access to all three books. Because someone emailed me and said, how can I buy these books? And I'm like, well, I mean, you can buy them for yourself, but I would access the digital curriculum because you don't have to, or support what we're doing, and then we'll just keep making the curriculum available that way instead of buying the books. Now, if everyone decides they want to buy the books on their own, let me know, and then we can just stop the paying for the digital subscription that everyone can have access to, right? I mean, if you're going to buy the books, then we can just do away with the digital subscription. So just, definitely let me know that kind of stuff. You can email me any questions about any of this. I kind of want to, I'm not going to do it. I kind of want to just go all in with here's Elijah, here's Daniel. But I really want you to work on that. I got to give you something to do, right? I mean, you're going to if you don't have enough homework, you're going to get bored, right? All right, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. It looks like we have 6th century, 9th century. Is that what we have here? Where did I put? Is it 6th century and 9th century? I think is what we have. If I remember correctly, I'm going to throw that out there one more time. Give me 1 second here. I'm looking in a book. I'm picking up a different book here. This is a book called The Ultimate Bible Guide. It's a pretty neat little reference tool. It's a little bitty hardback book. It's like $6, but it basically gives you an introduction to every book of the Bible. Yeah, Daniel's the 6th century prophet, exiled to Babylon. Judahite is the way they have it written here. And then, Daniel prophesied during the reigns of the Babylonian kings and one Persian king. They have 605 to 530 BC. 605 to 530 BC, and I think we had a source that had Elijah in the 9th century. Did we? I think. So there you go. I think you're getting an idea there. All right. Okay. Yeah. I think I feel a little bit better. I don't know. We'll stop. I'll stop. The reason I'm hesitating is because sometimes I don't get any emails, and I'm curious. Did they really work out the problem? Did they really? Because sometimes I'll give a problem like I'm going to get a lot of emails. I thought I was going to get all kinds of emails yesterday about the laying on the dead body 3 times, 3 unclean things in the chapter. I thought we really went all in there. I thought we were going to get just a crazy amount of emails, and I've got one, and once again, sometimes I'm just confused by that. Like I do something about COVID and a medication, which I'm really just trying to make a spiritual point, and boom, my email box blew up. I do this really, I think, very interesting study of, look here in 1 Kings 17, we have someone laying on a body 3 times, but we have 3 situations of something being unclean here. This is a beautiful spiritual picture, I think. And then you're like, okay, no. But if I turn on the microphone and say something again about COVID or about, then I'll get the emails. And it's like, how do we generate that same zeal and passion for God's word that people seem to have about controversial subjects? I think that's, if you figured that out, let me know. That would be, I've talked about this forever. Way back when I did a podcast more focused on news. Man, it wasn't any problem generating emails. Okay, just talk about it. Boom, 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 email. And then you say, okay, today we're going to do a devotional study, and I really want your feedback. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the scriptures. And then you see that in just everyday practice. Can you get Christians to actually talk about studying the Bible? Can you? If you create a chat room and you bring all these Christians in, like, okay, all right, guys, here we go. We can talk about our studying of the Bible. You are met with resounding silence. It's just, I don't get Christians not wanting to discuss God's word. That's a whole separate podcast, but it just makes me think of it because I thought after yesterday, I'm like, man, we went in. We went in on 1 Kings 17. That was a fun study, and one emo. But you watch the live broadcast that I did earlier. You watch. I bet you I get more than one on that one. I bet you I'm going to get more than one on that one. It's just, it's I don't know. I'll never understand. All right. I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com. Newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. All right. Everyone have a great evening. God bless.